Number 9. USS Arizona and USS Utah. The American battleship USS Arizona was built in 1916 during the First World War, but it saw little combat before the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941. It fought fiercely in the battle that led to the U.S. officially entering World War II, but this would be the last action that the Arizona participated in. It was bombed during the attack and sank to the ocean floor, taking 1,177 service members along with it. An older battleship called the USS Utah was also destroyed at Pearl Harbor when it was struck by a torpedo. Navy divers spent the next several years recovering turrets, sensitive material, machinery, live ammunition, and masts from the Arizona wreck. They also brought 105 bodies to the surface, but their efforts were cut short due to safety concerns and the emotional impacts of the work. The remaining individuals were declared buried at sea. The Arizona and Utah represent 2 out of 3 ships that never returned to service after the attack. Both remain on the sea floor to this very day. The third ship, USS Oklahoma, was raised and then sold for scrap, but it was destroyed in a storm before it could be dismantled. The wrecks went unexamined for decades until the 1980s when the National Park Service took over the site's management. It wasn't until then that divers discovered that one of the Arizona's turrets had survived the attack, despite the long-held belief that all of its turrets had been destroyed. This is just one example of the many things that the submerged battleships have taught researchers. It just goes to show that if the wrecks weren't there to study, then a lot of what happened at Pearl Harbor would be a complete mystery. Number 8. Swedish Atlantis. While diving off the Swedish coast in the Baltic Sea back in 2014, a team of divers discovered a rare cache of submerged Stone Age artifacts. Dubbed Sweden's Atlantis, the site may represent one of the oldest Nordic settlements ever found. Its contents were left behind by a nomadic tribe roughly 11,000 years ago. The artifacts include wood and flint tools, carvings, animal horns, ropes, and bones belonging to an extinct cattle species and ancestor of modern-day bovines known as the auroch. Thanks to their placement in a black, gel-like sediment called gytja, which is made from decaying peat, the items were found in remarkable condition for their age. The items must have become encased in the oxygen-free substance not long after they were submerged. Archaeologists who identified the site as part of a bigger, long-term excavation project hope to eventually find burials there. This would qualify Swedish Atlantis as an actual settlement rather than a temporary camp for a group of ancient nomads. Experts were quick to point out that despite its nickname, the site is not the fabled lost civilization that the Greek philosopher Plato wrote about. After all, most researchers don't believe that Atlantis ever actually existed, and they certainly don't want to add any existing confusion to the matter. Number 7. Aboriginal settlements. When the first people arrived in Australia around 65,000 years ago, sea levels were much lower than they are today. As the planet cooled and entered the most recent ice age, these levels fell even more, extending coastlines much further than where they currently stand. To give you an idea, sea levels were 427 feet lower than they are now when the ice age peaked around 20,000 years ago. These early Australian inhabitants, known as Aborigines, built settlements in places that were swallowed by the ocean when the climate warmed significantly between 18,000 and 8,000 years ago. While working off the country's northwestern coast last year, archaeologists made the first discoveries of underwater Aboriginal settlements. The 2 sites had slowly sunk beneath the waves toward the end of the Ice Age. One settlement, located off the Dampier Archipelago, contains hundreds of stone tools which were found sitting just 8 feet underwater. The other site sits 46 feet underwater. It yielded at least 1 stone cutting tool made from locally sourced materials. Both settlements are at least 7,000 years old. The people who established these sites along the coast traveled to Australia by boat from what is now Indonesia. Scientists are sure that there are more submerged Aboriginal settlements waiting to be discovered, and that studying them will help resolve unanswered questions about the movement of prehistoric humans. Number 6. Strange Blue Blob. A groundbreaking study has just announced the discovery of a region of mysteriously cooling water in the North Atlantic that appears to be protecting glaciers from the harmful effects of climate change. Scientists believe that this so-called blue blob may help the region cool for another 3 decades, but they're not sure exactly how it formed. They do have a few theories which are discussed in the newly published research. Located just south of Greenland and Iceland, the water reached its coldest point during the 2014-2015 winter. Thanks to the blob, ocean surface temperatures were 2.52 degrees Fahrenheit colder than normal that year. Using climate models and field observations, a team of researchers proved that the unusually cold water is chilling the region effectively enough to slow down the melting of its glaciers. And if their predictions are correct, this will continue to happen until 2050. This may seem like fantastic news, but there is a downside. It seems as though the effects will be temporary and that climate change will ultimately defeat this cooling mechanism. After the blue blob's effects wear off, glacial melting will once again accelerate and air temperatures will also rise. Simply put, the only real way to mitigate the effects of climate change is for humans to take deliberate action against the disastrous impacts of our own activities. After all, researchers believe that we are triggering the current era of climate change, so it's on us to do what we can to stop it. Can you think of anything you can do personally that would help our planet? Let us know in the comments below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to subscribe. Number 5. ATLANTIS. Back in 1984, a marine archaeologist named Ehud Galili discovered the submerged ruins of an ancient fishing village off Israel's Carmel coast, 33 feet beneath the waves. Known as ATLANTIS, the settlement dates back between 6900 and 6300 BC. As one of the world's best preserved prehistoric underwater villages, it offers a rare glimpse at pre-pottery Neolithic society. Excavations at the 10-acre site uncovered houses, burials, and an interesting semicircular arrangement of 7 monolithic stones that once surrounded a spring. The settlement also contains the earliest known examples of deliberately built freshwater wells. Additionally, scientists recovered the remains of 100 plant species, including plants that were purposely grown, as well as those that grew naturally and were gathered. They also found wild and domestic fish and animal bones. Residents enjoyed good health and exceptionally long lives compared to most people in the world at the time. On average, the villagers at ATLANTIS lived to around 50 years old. Their balanced diet may have contributed to their longevity. But some challenges were inescapable, including disease. In fact, the earliest known evidence of tuberculosis was detected among the human remains found at ATLANTIS. The discovery proves that the disease is at least 3,000 years older than scientists originally thought. ATLANTIS inhabitants also suffered from malaria and an ear condition related to cold water diving. It appears as though the village was abruptly deserted for reasons that remain unclear to this day. Experts can't seem to agree on what drove residents away. They've considered a multitude of possible factors, including a volcanic eruption and a tsunami. Evidence shows that chronic flooding became a problem in the region around 9,000 years ago, indicating that rising sea levels may have also been an issue for the coastal settlement. Number 4. Water Witch Shipwreck. Sometimes the process of searching for an archaeological artifact or ruin is more mysterious than the object or site itself. This was certainly the case when it came to a steamship that disappeared in 1863, shortly before the Civil War ended. Known as the Water Witch, it got caught in a vicious storm in Lake Huron and plunged 230 feet to the bottom of Saginaw Bay, taking its entire crew of somewhere between 17 and 22 men with it. Shipwreck hunters searched for the Water Witch for over half a century before a 79-year-old man named Dave Trotter finally located it last year. Trotter is one of Michigan's most successful shipwreck hunters. He's found more than 100 missing vessels throughout his career. Speaking with local station WZZM, he said that he spent over 40 years searching for the Water Witch. His interest in finding it peaked after the discovery of its sister ship, the City of Detroit, in 1998. Like the Water Witch, the City of Detroit sank in Saginaw Bay. The ships were captained by a pair of brothers named George and Redmond Ryder. After finding the City of Detroit, Trotter thought it would be easy to locate the Water Witch. But the search dragged on for 23 years while he and his team scoured a 2,500 square mile area of the lakebed. Finally, Trotter spotted an undiscovered wreck and a dive team was dispatched to the site to investigate further. They spent less than half an hour capturing footage of the sunken ship from end to end, hoping to capture the smoking gun evidence of its identity. The divers estimated that the ship was 170 to 180 feet long, which kept it in the running for possibly being the Water Witch. Trotter's team compared the wreck's features with records of the vessel and found that they matched up. They had found the missing ship, which sank just 15 miles from the City of Detroit, despite the two sinking a decade apart from one another. Number 3. Bizarre Holes. While exploring the seabed off the Big Sur, California coast in 2019, a team of experts from the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute counted thousands of strange holes in the ocean floor. They already knew these bizarre pockmarks exist. In fact, the first one had been discovered around 20 years earlier, but until recently, scientists were unaware of just how many of them there are. On average, the largest pits measure 600 feet in diameter and 16 feet deep. In a statement, researchers described them as nearly circular and fairly evenly spaced. Altogether, there are over 5,200 large pockmarks spanning a 500 square mile area. Scientists don't know what caused the holes to form or why there are so many of them. In addition to the larger pits, there are around 15,000 smaller pockmarks according to MBARI researchers Eve Lunston and Charles Paul. These so-called microdepressions, which the researchers describe as recently formed erosional features, measure roughly 11 feet across and 3 feet deep on average. But they don't know much else about these strange pits. What do you think they are? Let me know in the comments below. But first, be sure to subscribe. Number 2. Mammoth Tusk. While exploring the Pacific seafloor in 2019, scientists from the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute spotted what looked like a mammoth tusk. But they were 185 miles from land when they spotted the object 10,000 feet beneath the waves, begging the question of how it got there in the first place. The team determined that the 3-foot-long tusk belonged to an extinct Columbian mammoth that died around 100,000 years ago. A tusk this old would be an extremely rare find on dry land. The fact that it was found far out into the ocean makes it even more exceptional. It's even more shocking that the artifact wasn't destroyed or buried after sitting on the sea bottom for so long. The dark, frigid, and nearly oxygen-free conditions of the environment kept the tusk remarkably well preserved. In fact, it might be the most intact mammoth tusk ever found in that particular part of North America. Researchers hope that it will teach them more about mammoth lineages. They plan to perform CT scans and will try to extract DNA. This could prove especially helpful because Columbian mammoths are a hybrid of 2 different species, but their origins and when the hybridization began remain unclear. Number 1. Ancient Canoe. Maritime archaeologist Tamara Thompson and her friend were testing underwater scooters last year when the pair spotted what they initially thought was a log. But they realized that it would be strange for a log to have made its way to the bottom of the lake. Suspecting that perhaps it was a man-made wooden object, they decided to gather some colleagues and take a closer look. And it's a good thing they did. The 15-foot-long artifact turned out to be a 1,200-year-old dugout canoe. It's the oldest intact boat ever found in Wisconsin. The team recovered it from its watery resting place 27 feet below the surface, bringing it in contact with the air for the first time since 800 AD. It may have been carved by members of the Ho-Chunk Native American tribe. In the absence of modern tools, the canoe's builders would have burned a tree trunk and then used stone tools to hollow it out. This was a painstaking process that would have taken hundreds of hours and a great deal of skill, according to Wisconsin state archaeologist Jim Skibo. Now that the canoe has been exposed to light and air after spending over a millennium in the cold, dark water, the team is working diligently to ensure its preservation so that it doesn't deteriorate. This is an even more time-consuming process than it was to build the boat in the first place and is expected to take several years. Once it's finished being preserved, it'll probably go on display at a state history museum. Thanks for watching. Have you ever found anything mysterious underwater? Let us know in the comments below and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time for another amazing video right here on American Eye.